Hi, my name is Justine Pretorius. I'm a digital marketing manager at MeetGreen. Zero waste has been a very popular topic in events during the past few years. Today, Eric Wallinger, Director of Sustainability, and Aaron Elliott, a sustainability consultant from MeetGreen, will talk about how to achieve zero waste at an event. Hi guys, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Hi, Justine. My name is Eric Wallinger, and I'm Director of Sustainability at MeetGreen.
Hello, Eric and Justine. I'm Aaron. I'm a project manager and sustainability consultant here at MeetGreen.
So let's dig in. What is MeetGreen and what is a zero waste event?
Well, I'll start out. MeetGreen is a sustainable conference management agency that helps clients plan green events. We celebrated our 25th anniversary last year, and we've worked on events ranging from about 300 people up to 40,000. In our 25 years, we've learned quite a bit about waste, and we have helped recycle almost 9 million pounds of waste during that time. We've helped compost more than 3 million, and we've helped donate more than 900,000 pounds of event materials. Since 1994, we've witnessed many strategies and trends in the industry around waste management, but in the last few years, one in particular, as Justine was mentioning, has gained traction, and that's zero waste events. What's interesting to Aaron and I about zero waste events is that there is a bit of a range in terms of what that can mean. It seems to mean different things to different events. There's not a true consistent standard yet. But for some, it's about reducing waste and promoting responsible consumption and production. In other cases, it can be tied solely to achieving landfill diversion rates above certain thresholds. And so in our world, in event waste, one of the ways we measure our sustainability is through what we call a diversion rate, a landfill diversion rate. So that's the amount or percentage of waste that you are diverting or keeping out of the landfill. And so very often the magic number for a zero waste event in our industry is 90%, but it does range. There is a range out there depending on kind of whose information you're going to go with. But a zero waste event often means that 90% or more of your waste is being diverted from the landfill.
So does that mean zero waste events aren't actually zero waste?
Yeah, so this is where it gets a little bit confusing on the surface in that very few, if any, events that we produce or anyone produces has absolutely zero waste coming from it. Zero waste as a term really means zero waste that goes to landfill. So it's really finding a second home for any waste that you do produce. So whether that be saved for reuse later, donated to some sort of community organization, or composted or recycled, leaving a very small amount, 10% or less really for that zero waste tag, but just as little as possible going to the landfill in the end.
Okay. Well, if zero waste or high landfill diversion is our goal, what are the key best practices to be sure to embed in our event planning?
Well, we've at MeetGreen have weighed in a little here with our perspective on zero waste and what those best practices can be. And the first five are as follows. And interestingly, only one of those five is actually related to diversion rate, because we believe that zero waste and waste reduction is more of a comprehensive picture than purely diversion. And so the first is, did your event measure and report on its waste stream? Very important. Did your event use the three critical diversion paths: recycling, compost, and donation? Did you engage your relevant and core stakeholders around waste planning? We can talk about this a little more later, but at a per person level, did your event generate less than 5 kilograms of waste per person? And then lastly, we have chosen 90% as well. And did your event achieve a diversion rate above 90% or higher? And so those are both best practices and kind of lines in the sand of has your event kind of met those? And to do that, we highly recommend starting early in the planning process. Ideally, 6 to 8 months out. If you can do it even before then, even better. And so starting by clearly expressing to your sales manager, this will be really important, your CVB contact, even embedding some language in your contract that you're looking to achieve a zero waste event, measuring your waste. You might even want to contract for back of house sorting, having people back of house sorting through waste, common at some venues. Usually though, it is a special service, and they can often divert and sort at a higher rate than a municipal waste system. Engaging your core stakeholders, and in particular, making sure you're engaging your general contractor, your brand creative team who's producing your signage and banners and that sort of thing, and your food and beverage. These are your big three, and there are more, but what comes from them will come out of that event. And so also making sure you're enrolling your event manager, as they're your on-site kind of advocate for making sure everything goes smoothly. Show cleaning, engineering, and operations leads. And we've found that one way to kind of corral all this is have kind of an hour-long call once or twice a month in the months leading up to your event. We call that a green stakeholder call. And we found that's a really critical piece to kind of keeping this moving and making sure you're achieving your objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I'm listening to Eric talk, I'm realizing that the waste system is inherently confusing, especially when you're talking to multiple different vendors and trying to figure out what sort of waste is being produced. So one thing that we like to do at MeetGreen is kind of look at it holistically and look at it as a multi-step process. So first and foremost, as you're engaging your stakeholders, trying to ensure that you're capturing as much data as possible. So you're figuring out what is actually coming out of your event, what you're actually producing. After you know that, trying to figure out what sort of waste in that kind of system you can reduce before the event even starts. So of course it would be a lot easier if you reduced a significant amount of your waste, then you wouldn't have to deal with it at the back end of your event. So things like ordering too much food in the previous year could be addressed in the next year. Using disposable serviceware, for instance, could be replaced by reusable serviceware that can be washed and reused over and over time. You don't have to worry about the disposal of those things. So kind of going through that multi-step process, and then after you are left with kind of the waste that trickles down, diverting as much as possible through reuse efforts, donation efforts, recycling, and compost as well.
All right. What are some of the challenges that tend to present themselves when managing waste and events?
There are, of course, pretty many, but a couple that come to mind for me is there's quite a challenge in the world of convention center style events. It's quite an achievement to have a 90% diversion rate at a concert or sort of a 3-hour sports gathering, but it gets even a little more tricky when you have a 4-day, 40,000 person convention where you're serving full meals, you have custom builds, and that sort of thing. So we do it all the time in our world, but it is a big challenge, and it really requires that we start early and kind of view that differently than we might view a concert. A second quick piece is sort of fighting against the perception that we actually need more bins. I think Aaron and I are finding in some ways we actually need less bins, but keeping them more curated, signed, and clustered. An example of a cluster would be compost, recycling, and landfill. You always want them to be very visible all together, not spread around. And so fighting against the perception that we just sort of need bins everywhere to capture waste.
Yeah, for sure. And one other quick challenge that we run into a lot is just that various different materials are presented as recyclable or compostable. They're written right there on the actual product that they are recyclable and compostable. And sometimes they are in your local kind of system, and sometimes they aren't. So doing that double check and not just kind of believing what you read on the side of the package is really important.
Oh, good advice. Are there any challenges unique to events in the aftermath of COVID-19?
There are also likely to be many. One I'll mention right now is there could be impact to the back of house sorting that I mentioned. There may be less of an appetite to contract for having folks hand sorting through waste on the back docks for the next year or more. So that's one impact. And how about you, Aaron?
Yeah, just thinking through kind of how the virus spreads and that it lives on surfaces for a while, we're foreseeing kind of the use of more disposable service items, more single-use plastic items, those sorts of things, to reduce the amount of contact they have with the folks preparing your food and other attendees as well. So of course, number one is safety. So we want to make sure that everyone's safe in the short run, and then look ahead to when things start opening up, when it's more when it's safer to start using reusables, to have a plan in place to switch over to that and not forget that those exist because you've been using disposables for a while.
All right. Our final question: if you had one bit of advice for planners and agencies out there regarding their waste, what would you say?
I think for me, it would be taking that long view of waste management, remembering that this is a marathon and not a sprint. We have had and seen with a number of our clients who've been working on this for a few years, it's taken, a few years to really get to where they really want to be. We've also seen some of our clients working on this for a decade or more. So it is a journey. And so, kind of going into it with clear eyes that the best way to manage your waste, as Aaron was saying, is sort of not to make it in the first place. And it just brings up those deeper questions around your event and global supply chains, and kind of coming in with that view that this is a commitment, a long-term commitment that your team's making.
Yeah, for sure. And after you've made all of these commitments and done all of this great work, it's so important to share your successes, share your stories. It doesn't have to be a huge multi-level success story to tell that makes a pretty significant environmental impact, and sharing that out to attendees makes them feel good about being at your event because you've done the work, and it empowers them to continue doing that work when they get home as well. And really, it gives you a well-deserved pat on the back for making this a priority in your event.
Great. Well, thank you both for taking the time to discuss zero waste and sharing your expertise with all of us.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Be safe.